It's Tuesday, which means it's time for a tutorial. Today, we're going to be looking at taking out an interest-free loan on Liquity, which is a major new lending and borrowing platform. And it's also the platform that Justin Sun was at risk on when there was that massive liquidation possible, and then he rescued it. So I thought it'd be worth taking a look at because there's a lot of interesting things here that we can learn from and try out. And as these borrowing mechanisms improve, we're going to see more and more innovative products come along. Liquity is pretty interesting. So how does it work exactly? Well, what you're going to do is deposit some ETH, and then you're going to borrow their native stablecoin LUSD against it, but at 0% interest. And how does that work? Well, you effectively just pay a fee up front for the privilege of taking out the loan, and then that's it. And there's no term on the loan either, so you can take as long as you like to pay it back. And that's it, basically. And before we go any further, a word from our sponsors. We all know the feeling of paying high fees and waiting for transactions to confirm when interacting with DeFi. Well, no more. Solana has built a fast, censorship-resistant blockchain where you can build and use crypto apps that scale today. The network supports thousands of transactions per second with fees less than a cent and over 500 validators. To learn more, head over to solana.com/Defiant to get started building and join this rapidly expanding community. Now, do you remember your first DeFi transaction? After juggling 5 or more tabs on your browser, you gaze at that Etherscan confirmation feeling like you just contributed to the future of finance. Except you got quickly lost in a world of gas prices, vaults, pools, hard forks to gens, and sushi chefs. Fortunately, Zerion got you covered. They built the dream tool for managing your portfolio. You can track all your token balances across wallets and chains, access every kind of DeFi asset, including indexes, pools, and yield strategies, and trade at the cheapest rates with no extra fees. And that is because Zerion sources liquidity from every decentralized exchange like Uniswap, 0x, and 1inch. There's no sign-up required, no fees, and a blissfully easy UI. Simply connect your wallet at app.zerion.io. Now let's get back to the tutorial. So let's start at the top here. There are lots of different ways to borrow against Ethereum as a piece of collateral. And you can do it on Maker, you can do it on all sorts of different platforms. But what you notice is that there is an interest rate, as you would expect in traditional finance, and it's a floating interest rate. So it goes up and down, it can change. And depending on what the market is doing at any given time, you could be easily liquidated. Excuse me. So what Liquity does is it gets rid of floating interest rates. And if you're interested on how they did this, they have a great Medium article from Colton that explains exactly how that happens. So we don't need to go into all of that. But the main asset that we're going to be looking at specifically is LUSD. That's their native stablecoin. And if we look on CoinGecko, you can see it's trading at $1.02 at the moment. And funnily enough, if we look at the trend over the last 90 days or so, it's kind of mooning, it's kind of going up. So it is meant to be pegged to a value of $1, but obviously that peg moves up and down as it does with any stablecoin. And that does actually offer arbitrage opportunities, and we'll get back to that in a second to look at why that's important. Then in terms of the total value locked, if we look at DeFi Pulse, it did top out when the market really hit its peak at $5 billion, then dropped, as everything did, to a little above $2 billion in those cascading liquidations. And they would have been a big stress test for this platform, as we saw with Justin Sun, in fact. But the protocol is now recovering nicely and heading up above $3 billion in total value locked. $3 billion is a lot of money. It really genuinely is. So there is also a Medium article about how Liquity did, in fact, handle its first big stress test on the 19th of May. I definitely recommend reading that to give an example of how it all went down. Because obviously, every time you take out a loan, unless you're doing it on a platform where you cannot be liquidated, you are at risk of being liquidated. So something to bear in mind. So how does it work exactly? It works like this. You deposit ETH as collateral. You're then able to take out a loan against that collateral. And what's interesting about Liquity is that compared to something like Maker, where the over-collateralization has to be 150%, the minimal collateral ratio for Liquity is only 110%. Now, I wouldn't recommend going that low just because you are, well, this is crypto. Things are volatile, and that would mean that you are at high risk of being liquidated. So I wouldn't go there. But this is the first time I've seen a collateral decentralization ratio that low. So the LUSD is the native stablecoin, as I said. And there's all sorts of different ways that this can be used, but primarily you can redeem LUSD at any time for $1 worth of ETH. Not $1, but $1 worth of ETH. So let's say LUSD is trading at 98 cents. You could buy the LUSD and redeem it for a $1 face value. So there's an arbitrage opportunity. Obviously, you have to buy quite a lot of it, but if that was your game, take out a flash loan, buy it, redeem it, all in one go. That's a great arbitrage opportunity. We will be looking at setting up an arbitrage bot in a future video in coming weeks, and I think this would be exactly the kind of opportunity you would be looking out for. So that's how that works. You pay a fee when you take out a loan, but there's also a fee when you redeem the loan, and those fees go into a pool, which is then given back to people who run front ends and to people who are staking LUSD. So that's the other thing that we should talk about here, the front ends. So Liquity itself is a protocol. It just exists. It's completely decentralized. And people can run front ends on that protocol that enable users like myself to take out a loan. That is how it works. So when you go to the Liquity website, you'll see a menu item here, front ends. We're going to click on that. And it gives you different ways that you can become a front end operator. So if you decide that you think you can create a great user experience and a great UI, then you can. And then it's up to you to market that and generate profit from that however you want to. Wonderful thing about decentralized lending protocols, you can do stuff like this. So you've got a lot of different options here. I found it hard to kind of decide between them which one was best, but I went to this one when I was testing it yesterday, liquity.ap. So I'm going to use the same one again. And that will then take us to the liquity.ap front end. And that's it. So there is one other thing that we need to bear in mind here. There is a minimum loan requirement of $2,000. So the same way that we have vaults on Maker, on Liquity, you have troves. So the first thing we're going to do is deposit some ETH. So what I'm going to do now is type in a borrow of 2,000. So you see here the total debt must be at least $2,000. And then I think for us to be able to take that out, we need to do 1.4. 1.4 ETH should be enough. You'll see here there's also a liquidation reserve. This is a fee that would cover the gas cost a liquidator would pay to liquidate your trove, and you are refunded this fee when you repay your debt. So in order to keep the system capable of being liquidated, you pay this 200 LUSD liquidation fee up front. So there's a few different fees that you need to be aware of here. So we're going to deposit 1.4, we're going to borrow 2,000, and that will give us then a collateral ratio of 164%. Now, if I was to lower the ETH collateral that I put in, and see what happens to the numbers. So I go 1.2 ETH, my now collateral ratio is 140%, and so on and so on. So if I could only put 1 ETH in, my collateral ratio is now at 117%, and that means I am very close to the threshold for being liquidated. So for me, I think 1.4 feels like a decently safe margin, and I can now confirm that. So as per usual, I need to sign a transaction, and now we wait. What I've been having to do recently in order to make anything happen is speed up my transactions. Okay, so that's it. We have taken out a loan. And if you look up here, you will see we have 2,000 LUSD in our account. So what does that mean exactly? Well, you can see the ratio here, 164%. That will move around as the price of ETH moves around. But I think that's a pretty safe ratio. And as you can see, it's green. But of course, you always want to keep an eye on that. It should be part of your daily routine just to check, see where the market is. And of course, you can withdraw at any time by selecting here. You can repay at any time. and you can close your trade. All of these things are possible within the UI. We'll cover them in a future thing. It was really just about taking out a loan this time. And then once you have your LUSD, well, what are you going to do with it? Well, think of it like a stablecoin. So you could trade it against another stablecoin for DAI, for instance. And because all of these DeFi protocols are interconnected through money Legos, I'm sure you could use it in other ways to stake or to farm. And of course, right here in the platform itself, we have a stake option. So I can stake in the stability pool. So that stability pool is designed obviously to keep LUSD stable. There's an APR of 34.95%. So if I stake LUSD in here, then I will earn LQTY, which is the reward token for liquidity. And if you're running a front end, you get LQTY. And if you are staking here, you get LQTY. And the LQTY is made up of the profits from the fees from redemption. So when you redeem LUSD for ETH, there's a fee to pay. And when you take out a loan, like I just did, there's a fee to pay there. That all goes into the LQTY. One other thing I was just going to say, when I was talking about LUSD, when the price of LUSD is trading below $1 and you buy it and you use that as an arbitrage opportunity, when LUSD is redeemed for ETH, that contracts the supply of LUSD. So that should then bring the price of LUSD back up in line with its peg of $1. That's how that works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stake LUSD. I'm going to stake the max because I'd like those sweet LQTY tokens. Confirm that. And then we have a $14.55 transaction fee, which I'm also going to speed up because Lord knows I spend enough time waiting for these things. So that's the final stage of this. Take out a loan, get LUSD, stake your LUSD. So this whole broadcasting thing and the pending window, this seems to stay on screen for a really long time. But actually, if I look now, it tells me that I have 2,000 LUSD staked at an APR of 34.95%. One other thing to bear in mind here is that because this is a decentralized protocol, if I decide that I don't like this front end and I want to go to a different front end, let's say the liquity.ap front end, I can visit that and it will then read my entire position, what I've done. And actually, when I look at this liquity.ap dashboard, I think it's a lot nicer. So I think I would probably use this one over the one that I actually did use. So while we're looking at this dashboard, you can see here the liquidation price. And this is the dollar value per unit of collateral, which your trade will drop below 110%. So if the ETH price goes down towards $1,736, then, well, we're in trouble. So that's something to keep an eye on. And you can set alerts on Delta or Blockfolio, for instance, to give you advance warning of that happening. But of course, as we know, it can happen rather fast when it does happen. But I do not believe that we went that low during the flash crash. I think we only went to around 1,800. So that tells me that I should be okay. And that's it. We've done it. So that was a quick look at how to take out a loan on Liquidity, interest-free. I would highly recommend just to kind of keep an eye on what is going on in the broader market so you don't get liquidated. But keep your margins relatively safe. We'll keep looking at these lending and borrowing protocols in the future. But if you have a good one that you think we should try out and test, let me know. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.